this video, we're going to continue with our exploration of the user interface in 3D Coat by focusing now on the E panel. This is really an area where anyone who's trying to get accustomed to 3D Coat needs to get comfortable with, because this is really where all the magic happens. Once you know what these tools do, then you really have a lot of power at your disposal. Okay, so in the paint room, you can use these selection types to do all kinds of custom graphics, selections, free selections, and things of that sort. In the voxel sculpting room, you can use these selection types to select portions of your mesh for the pose tool, to scale it, transform it, whatever you need, or create Boolean type of operations. It's really, really powerful, especially the splines, and so we'll look at that shortly. Let's go ahead and start from left to right and hover over the little icon, and you can see an indication of just how that brush will perform when you start to paint with it or sculpt with it. So I'm going to go here to the head layer. I'll probably just create a kind of a garbage layer here to play with, and make sure specular's turned off, and I just want to work with color and depth. So and decrease my brush radius, and you can see how that works. Now when you hover over it, tells you what it does based on your brush pressure. So when you press down, it affects the radius and depth. Okay, so I'm going to start out real light and press down. You can see how that affected the radius as well as the depth. So if I start really slight, yeah. So I'll undo a few times. We'll go to the second one, and this one, as you can see, has more fall off, and brush pressure only affects the draw depth. Okay, so it will not change the radius at all. So as I press down, you can see it's rather constant. But if I go real light, you can see how that works. So this is ideal when you want very soft and subtle effects, whether in the sculpt room or paint room. Right now I'm painting with, let me switch to the head map here, and you can see the normal map is being affected. It's live normal map sculpting on the fly. If I were in micro vertex mode, this would be displacement map. Okay, so I'm going to undo that, and we'll go to the third brush, and you can see it has a bit of a fall off on the edges as well, but it's still a bit sharp tipped. Brush pressure modifies radius, depth, and the opacity. So again, I'll start off light, press really hard, go back to light again if possible. Okay, so pressing really hard, pressing lightly. Not as dramatic effect, but it works nonetheless. Okay, so this fourth one, droplet mode, it actually decreases the radius, so it makes it skinny as you press hard, and increases the depth and opacity. Oops, I'm sorry, let me undo this again. Press hard, and you can see how that works. Very light, press hard. So it's almost reverse of what you get with some of these others. Okay, so this one is the real performer right here, because it's kind of a no-nonsense brush. You can see there's no gradient, no sharpness. It's just kind of a flat, absolute brush. Constant depth and constant radius regardless. So I'm going to hit the E key to bring the E panel to me instead of having to continuously reach up here. So I hit the E key again, select that brush, and lighten up a little bit. Doesn't matter. Light to strong doesn't affect it at all. It's very constant and absolute. Now, because it's no nonsense, this is the best performing one. If you're just painting, you really want to feel color, and you can always use this soft fall off. You can create your own brush alpha, create new using curves, and you can always create your own really soft fall off. Brush. Okay. And so with this selected, you can still do some relatively nice work if you're sculpting or painting. But if I switch to a hard edge, I'm going to undo so I have a little more real estate here. Okay, you can see it's very crisp, no fall off at all. And so that may be what you want, but again, regardless, if you're sculpting or painting and you need a little extra kick in performance, you may want to use this. Okay, so let's go to our sixth brush here, and that's really just painting dabs. That's really all it is. So if I try to create a brush stroke, that's all it will do. It's kind of a no-nonsense brush as well, but it's really effective if you want to apply, a special brush alpha. Or maybe laces for a shoe or boot. And you can always use your 9 or 0 key to rotate in place. And a line tool here, let's choose just kind of a medium fall off here. Click once, click twice, and it makes a nice straight line if that's what you want. If you want a little bit of curvature, you can choose this one. Click once, and on your second click you can create a little bit of a rounded edge here. Now if you're wanting really real precision on a stroke, you want to use this tool, Paint with Splines, and we'll cover that in another video. But that you can just basically create a spline, and whatever brush alpha you have, it will place it along there, and you can use spacing and so on. So this is the one to use again for any kind of precision. So we'll go back to our stamp, and again we'll choose another brush alpha, and you can scale it and rotate it in place. So that's very handy. The other one is very similar, but you can't, by using your brush alone, modify the rotation or the scale. What you can do though is use your 9 or 0 key to rotate, and you still can see a preview. Okay, and if you want to scale it up, you can use your bracket keys to do that. So this is a very powerful little tool. Okay, so I'll undo. And this one, pretty self-explanatory. These are very much like what you see in Photoshop. And I'll use a regular brush alpha on this one. I'll go to the breastplate. create a layer here. To rotate my brush back into place. Okay, so you can see how that works. And obviously, if you are in the voxel sculpting room, you can use this. What I'm going to do is select the breastplate, hold the Alt key. Now you'll notice the frames per second are a bit choppy, okay, with a number of different objects in the scene, especially with all the other objects in the other rooms. So I can Alt click on an object to quickly isolate just that object, and Alt click it once again to bring all the others back up. So I'll do that again, Alt click. And so using these tools, I'll go to a orthographic view by hitting the 5 key on the number pad or clicking this icon. Okay, go to a frontal view. And I can use something like the cutoff tool, and it'll do just as it says. Okay, just that simple. And I'll undo that. Okay, and this time what I'm going to do is check depth limit, and I'm going to bring it way down. Okay, and that way this did not cut all the way through, it only cut in just a portion. I'll undo that again. I can bring it down even further. Type in a numeric value and 0.2. Okay, that's similar. It did not cut all the way through, so that's something to keep in mind, and it works with all these selection types. Okay, the border width, what that does is just think of that as anti-aliasing. Okay, it affects the smoothing of your brush. So if you want a much softer stroke, you want to bring that up. Okay, if you want a crisper stroke, probably keep it at default. Also, if you're painting or doing some type of sculpting work, oftentimes you may want to, for example, if I'm creating a selection, a freeze selection, so I'll switch to surface mode, use the freeze tool, and you'll notice that when I select, because I had ignore back faces on, it only applied the freeze to what the camera could see. Okay, if I uncheck that, obviously it should go all the way through. Oops. Uncheck depth limit. Redo this. There we go. Okay. So you can see how that works. Same thing with the freeform lasso. It's very good for just very quick down and dirty selections. So I'll go back to volume mode, and with the cutoff tool, just make some very quick Boolean operations, and again, no nasty Boolean aftertaste. If I hold the W key, you can see made it nice and uniform, no problem at all. 3D Coat resamples this mesh every time you do a brushing or cutting operation. Okay, so let's go back to the paint room. And probably the most versatile of all these is your Spline tool. Now this is a bit different than what you may be accustomed to. It's not a Bezier spline, but you do have the option for B-splines. Okay, so I'm going to hit my 5 key on the number pad, and let's try to paint some graphics. I'm going to hit X to switch the foreground background color. This time I'll just turn depth off. I want to paint with just color this time. So okay, hit the escape key to finish the spline. Right click on the point that I want to sharpen. And if I want to unsharpen it again, I can just right click on it again. Okay. I can also use edit points table if I want, but this is much more interactive and much faster, I think. Okay, so yeah. Alright, so now just hit enter. I can hit the escape key to drop that. I can undo and it'll bring the spline back up. Hit the escape key to finish that. And now if I want to save that to reuse it at some point, regardless of the scene, I can click save. Maybe save it in a splines profile. I tend to save them in the documents directory, 3D Coat splines, because if you put it in the hard drive, the main installation folder, it may get overwritten when you install a new build or something. So you put it here in the splines or spline profiles, whichever you prefer. Okay, and then you can always load. You can also, if you have shapes from Illustrator, or you could create shapes in Illustrator and just click Load Shape. And as you can see, SVG, EPS, TGA, BMP, PNG, JPEG. So any kind of shape, it should bring it in. Okay. Now the image formats such as BMP, PNG, JPEG, these 3D Coat will detect the edges, or at least it will try to. As a matter of fact, let's try that now. Okay, you see how it created a spline for me. So I can hit transform all, or I could flip edit points, flip vertically, okay, and transform all, scale it down, move it, edit points, escape. There you go. So I'm going to hit escape and just go ahead and delete that layer. Okay, and so these are, again, the ellipse. We'll try that just as in Photoshop. When you scale, if you hit shift, it will maintain the circular nature of that shape. And basically it projected on there, so what I need to do is probably be a little more straight on here. I can start and just hold shift and it will snap to a circular pattern. There you have it. And you can see this last one basically lets you paint on the polygons. Single polygons. Very handy. So if you really want to, to be very precise along some edge loops, you can just drag select Very, very powerful. How cool is that? All right, so I think that covers the ePanel for now. In the next video, we're going to finish up our look at the user interface by covering some of the toolbar options here, also your menu items, as well as covering presets. Once we're done with this look at the user interface, we will move on and go deeper into the tool set of the individual rooms. So stay tuned.